Hey everyone, welcome to this episode where we are taking you all the way across to Boston and to a university that some of you are very interested to know more about, Harvard University. And with me today on the show is senior Dhruv Goyal. Hey Dhruv,
Hi.
welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
It's such a pleasure to have you here today. And the first thing I want to ask you is talk about your own experience at Harvard and being at one of the finest schools with one of the finest bunch of undergrads along with you.
I think the one thing that an environment like Harvard or any of these schools sort of pushes you to do is it really forces you to go outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Just because it's such a challenging environment. You're having dinner table conversations with people that excel at their own specific field. So you'll have someone who's a world champion fencer, you'll have someone who's a world champion debater, someone who's a world champion munner, and someone who loves archaeology, someone who loves psychology. And so what that does is when all of these people come together and have a conversation, it's very enriching because you get so many different perspectives.
Sure, and in building your entire worldview.
Absolutely, I think that's the most important thing, right? Why do you go to study abroad in the first place or to study at university? Just because you want to open your mind up. The way I look at an undergraduate education is specifically building the toolkit, the knowledge skill set that you can use for the rest of your life. I'll tell you a very interesting story of this one gentleman. He's a very big donor to our school.
Okay.
One class that he remembers from his undergraduate education days was this class on thinking about thinking, a class that really exposed him or really opened his mind to the way he thinks about problems. And then whatever problem he then experiences, he has the toolkit which can allow him to then solve those problems. There's this very interesting line that I think Mr. Shashi Tharoor said in one of his speeches, where he says that if the 20th century was all about the birth of democracy and the fight for democracy, the 21st century will be the fight for diversity.
Dhruv was the first elected fully international vice president of a student body where he was chosen on an entirely school-wide election campaign. This doesn't sound like it was easy.
It absolutely wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. I joined student government my freshman year, really worked my way through the ranks. You start off as a legislator, then become an executive board member, and then you run in a school-wide election as a president, vice president ticket. The election specifically was a lot of work. There was about a month or 2 months of just no sleep, running around the school. So it's quite an emotional roller coaster. Dealing with the media, it was my first experience dealing with any sort of media. It was a school student publication, but still, I mean, they were pretty fierce. And it really forced me to break out of all of the bubbles that we kind of live in. So irrespective of whichever university you go to, there's always going to be a bubble of the kind of people that you hang out with, the kind of spaces that you're hanging out in, the classes that you take, the conversations that you have. When you are in this position, what it forces you to do just by nature of having to meet people in different corners of the university, having to interact with them and listen to them and hear them out, what that does is it really forces you to break out of these bubbles. And I think that was the most important part of this experience.
You've been involved in student leadership, as far as I know, way back from high school days.
Yeah, right.
So for someone looking up to you, what would you say would be some of the key skills or learnings that you've had you want to share back?
Absolutely. I think, I was involved in student government in high school as well. I mean, this is just something that I really enjoy. The house that I was leading had not won a house cup in about 6 years.
Oh, okay.
So rallying everyone, getting them together behind a single cause, making them all feel invested in the same project. I think that was what the experience was all about. When it comes to what are the skills or what are the tangible things, what is the advice that I could give someone aspiring to take on leadership roles in schools or colleges, I think the big key thing there is your ability to listen. because many of the best ideas come from your peers.
People, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
our flagship initiative was something that was over the last year, which now is flourished. Everyone's using it. It's an application that we built for college. It was an idea that someone else proposed to us.
Okay.
Yeah. The second big thing would be to create the right team. I think that's so important, just because and trusting the judgment of the people that you're working with. And I think that if you're able to achieve these three things, being genuine, listening, and building the right team, then you can achieve the results and justify why people have put you into that position.
Dhruv, you mentioned this emotional roller coaster, and I'm sure there were moments when there were detractors who were vocal. And how did you deal with all of that?
What happened was there was this issue that was brought up on Harvard's campus, which concerned about 20% of the student body. And the entire media, or sort of the Crimson, which is our student publication, was really forcing both Ava and I to take a very stand on that 20%. So sort of almost denounce that 20% that was engaged in a certain activity. The way we thought about our leadership was we represented as leaders of the entire student body, 100% of our community, right? So we were unwilling to denounce something that was very specific to a minority of our community. And what then happened was the newspaper somewhat turned on us. They started questioning why we were taking the stand we were taking. They went into some of our personal motives and things like that, right? And I distinctly remember it was one of the mornings when they wrote a scathing article against both of us. That morning, it was hard to just get out of bed. It was very, very hard just getting out of bed, because and going out there and facing everyone. I'm a 21-year-old, I'm not used to having a public sort of outcry against something that I've said or done. But the approach that I kind of tried to take was to say, look, let's talk about it.
Sure.
Let me tell you why I said what I said.
Wow.
Let me tell you why I did what I did. And so having those conversations, those tough conversations, was a huge learning experience. So that was almost sort of the tough parts of this roller coaster. The great parts were, when as I just mentioned, we had launched this application. We have more than 67% of our student body on this application, using it regularly. It's basically just putting together all of the college's resources under one roof, just to bridge any information asymmetries that might exist.
So you do this very interesting major in economics and government. So looking at internships and work opportunity, what are the sorts of things you keep in mind when you look for those?
The way I look at internships is an opportunity to explore something different. So if you look at I've had 3 internships at the end of my freshman, sophomore, and junior years. And each one is a very, very different experience, just because I wanted to have that breadth of exposure and then kind of narrow down and say, okay, this is something that I'm more interested in relative to another opportunity, right? So my freshman summer, it was the summer of 2013. The campaign had just started off in the Modi campaign. I'm a big fan of the BJP. And so it was natural for me to kind of tag on to that in some way or form. Very fortunate to have had that opportunity to spend a couple of months in the Gujarat Chief Minister's office and do a little bit of traveling. But it was a very political experience, right? And so very different from some of the things that you read about in textbooks. And then you can see how my sophomore experience sort of comes out of that, because one of the things we studied on the political sort of journey was financial inclusion, bringing the unbanked poor people into the financial system, right? Which we now see today as the Jan Dhan Yojana, right? So on the campaign, when we were envisioning that program, one of the things that came up was microfinance, right? And the impact that microfinance can have. And so my sophomore summer, I used the opportunities at Harvard Business School to study microfinance under 2 very renowned professors, right? So the second summer was more research focused. And then the third one was more in the corporate sector, very, very different from the public sector or research academia. which was working at McKinsey. So the big advice I would like to give everyone watching this is to think of your internships as a great way to build a variety of different skills.
Right.
As an 18 or 19-year-old, I don't know how many people know exactly what they want to do for the rest of their life. So certainly, explore is the one big sort of key advice I would give.
I think this is fantastic advice, because even if you're sure, I would suggest still explore, just to sort of be sure that you are sure.
Right. I think that the two things that I absolutely love doing, which are my best ways of relaxing, are playing billiards. I really, really enjoy playing snooker, billiards, pool. That was certainly one of my two favorite ways of relaxing, and the second one is TV shows. Okay. I absolutely love TV shows. I watch every single one, from Suits to House of Cards to Narcos is the new one.
Okay.
The one common misconception about Harvard is this idea that every single student that goes there is a big fat nerd that studies 20 hours a day, and B, we are the snobbish elitist sort of group that does not want to engage with the world. Okay. Let me try and counter both of these. The first one, what's interesting is that most of the students that come to Harvard are not they've met certain academic standards, which if you haven't, you're definitely not going to be there. But certainly, having met those academic standards, they've demonstrated some degree of excellence in something very specific.
Okay.
It could be, specific interests in the not-for-profit sector and done some incredible social service work. It could be a sport that you're really, really good at, and that's what Harvard is looking for, because it's that one thing that you'll bring to that dinner table that I mentioned earlier, which will then make those dinner table conversations far more interesting and meaningful for everyone in the room. Don't get me wrong, we certainly have some of the finest minds at our college, but that's not the end game. That's not the only kind of people that come there. Only kind of people that come there, and they're actually in the minority now when I look back. Yeah. So certainly do one thing, but be the best in the world at it, and that's something that Harvard likes to look at. The second thing, the snobbish idea, and the fact that we're very elitist and don't really engage with the real world and the way things work. If you look at some of the world's top not-for-profits, the World Banks, your IMFs, the Red Cross societies, the international institutions, the not-for-profits, the governments around the world, you'll see a lot of Harvard alumni there. Just because one of the mission of Harvard College is to create citizen and citizen leaders. Look at Zuckerberg, look at Bill Gates. These people have changed the way the world works. Obama, another Harvard grad. You can look around everywhere. We have tons and tons and tons of Harvard grads that have actually made a huge difference to the world.
Okay, so tell us, what is that one piece of advice that you would give that perhaps no one else would give? Yeah,
absolutely. So there was this very interesting thing that our dean actually told us, where he said that when we look for students during the admissions process, every student tries to talk about what they've done in the past.
Right.
Every student tries to talk about, these are the things that demonstrate why I'm a good fit for the school. But what Harvard also wants to see is what you hope to do in the future. How is it that your Harvard experience is going to or your college experience, how is that going to fit into your larger career path or your life plans? And it's not to say that, look, you write in your essay that you want to be the world's fastest runner when you haven't run at all. You got to obviously say that, look, I have demonstrated my interest in this field and here's what I've done, but it has to relate to something that moves forward,
Okay, so tell us one fun experience that you've had at college.
Absolutely. So it was actually not just at college, it was the months just before college. It was during my interview process. My interviewer's name was Robin Worth.
Okay.
Robin Worth. So I get an email from Dr. Robin Worth. This was the International Dean of Admissions.
Okay.
She was in India for something, and so she said we'll meet at this specific place. And I got an email from Dr. Robin Worth. My entire life I've grown up where Robin is a guy's name. Batman and Robin Hood,
Okay.
So I respond back saying, "Dear Mr. Worth, thank you so much for your email. I really appreciate you wanting to interview me, blah, blah, blah. We'll meet at this space." So I'm in the interview room, sort of space, and the secretary says, "Dr. Worth will be with you shortly." So I'm waiting in the waiting room, and suddenly a 65-year-old woman walks in, says, "Hi, Dhruv," and I say, "Hi," pretty confused as to what's happening. And so she walks in and she says, "I'm Dr. Worth." And I basically shivered for like 10 seconds, and I was like, I've blown my one shot at making, Harvard. And this is my, the Harvard International Dean of Admissions.
Okay, so how did you come back from there?
And so the first minute she was very nice about it. So yeah, the other key advice that I would give you is definitely Google
search
your interviewer's name
before you reply.
That was certainly,
Perhaps just stick with doctor.
Or just stick with doctor. I don't know why I was. So yeah.
Thank you so much for being
on the show.
It was absolutely my pleasure to host you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And wish you all the luck and success going forward, which I'm sure you're going to get.
Thank you so much.
Please click the subscribe button below. Like me at facebook.com/chetchat101. Follow my Twitter handle, chetchat101, or at Instagram, chetchat101. Please leave your comments in the sections below. And if you'd like me to feature any particular college, please let me know. Thank you.